7 o'clock. Okay, good evening. Welcome to the Westborough Advisory Finance Committee meeting of October 5th, 2023, here at Memorial Hall and Town Hall. This is our meeting, our 9th meeting of fiscal 2024. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting will be conducted in person and via remote means in accordance with applicable law. This means that members of the public body, as well as members of the public, may access this meeting in person or via virtual means. In-person attendance will be at the location in the agenda, and it is possible that all members of the public body may attend remotely, with in-person attendance consisting of members of the public. This meeting may be accessed remotely via the link in the agenda. When required by law or allowed by the chair, persons wishing to provide public comment or otherwise participate in the meeting may do so by in-person attendance or by accessing the meeting remotely as noted. Additionally, the meeting will be broadcast live in real time via Verizon Channel 28, Charter Channel 192, or via Westborough TV's online platforms at westboroughTV.org and youtube.com/WestboroughTV. This meeting is being recorded and streamed live by Westborough TV, and we thank them for their helpful assistance. Okay, welcome. I don't see Christy yet, so we won't start with her. Is there? You aren't here for public comment, are you?
No.
Oh, good.
Back to Christy.
Okay. Well, we'll get her here in a bit. You could give a talk. And Shelby, your entertainment. Wow. Okay. All right, so while I'm going to assume Christy will come in at some point, we'll figure out something else we can do at the moment. And I will guess I'll skip to the approval of minutes of number 6, September 21, the tri-board meeting. Anybody want to make a motion?
Shafford, motion to approve.
Bradley, second.
Shepherd, Bradley. Okay. Any conversation, changes, notes, complaints? If not, we don't have anybody remote, so we can do
Bradley,
this.
yes.
We can just raise hands.
Oh.
It's a rare opportunity.
Yeah.
Quick, all in favor? So that is 7-0-0 in
I
favor.
was saying yes, we could raise
And-
hands. I
Yes.
don't know. Right.
Yes.
What's the confusion?
That's right. Thank you, Sheila, for doing those. And that's good. Okay, so let's see what else I can do. We can kick off with a little discussion on the R&R quantity of books. Let's see if I get information out. I'm hesitant to do the R&R discussion, because that might get interrupted, but
Are you looking for a motion?
Or
Or do you want a discussion?
Well, I'm not sure what the motion will be yet, so I think we have to discuss it, I guess, first to do that. Okay. So just as background for people, we will have to vote for some number of books to be printed because it comes out of our expense budget. And in background, we bought 300 books last fall town meeting at approximately $810. And the annual town meeting, we spent $935, which I forget the number. I think it was 400 or something like that. I reached out to John Arnold, and he reached out also to the town clerk. And the thought was from both of them that we consider 500 copies because they're expecting a larger turnout for the community center article. And that's a fine thing to do. We have plenty of money in our budget for these 500, but we will have to figure out a way to pay for books in the spring, either by an article or a transfer or something, because we have approximately $1,550 in our expense budget after we paid our dues to the Mass Association of Finance Committees, $250.
Was $300 enough for the last fall meeting? Because I assume library turnout would have driven.
I think we
more.
ran out pretty quickly.
Okay. Jean is pretty emphatically shaking that it was
Yes,
not enough.
I recall
so-
them running out. Other times, we've expected a lot more, and then, we only used 200. Not a huge expense in the scheme of how many
Right.
millions of dollars we're voting on. So I don't have a problem with doing that and figuring out the money for the spring later, if that is. So, do you want to make a motion for 500?
I'd make a motion that we print 500 copies of the R&R.
Second.
Second.
That's McMahon on the motion.
And clap, second. Okay, any more discussion? John, you want to make any comments? He's probably muted, so.
No, I mean, I think, it's always a big unknown knowing exactly how many voters are going to be motivated to come out. But given that the community center has attracted a certain amount of interest and discussion around town, I think I'd rather plan on having enough that at least for people in a close vicinity can share. And also we can put up on the screen at the town meeting what the link is to the report for people who bring iPads or phones or anything, so they can get to the PDF. But I mean, it's always a guess, but I'd rather guess on, I think that given the booklet won't be that big, I think publishing 15 seems like a good amount, and then we'll just continue, as we always do, we'll learn from there and figure out what we need in the future. So it seems reasonable to me.
And last year, we did have to do a transfer of almost $200, $195 to pay for the spring book, so we probably should have been smart enough to think about this ahead of time, that, one, the booklet cost has gone up in general from past years, and two, we might want to print more.
As an observation, we peaked last spring at around 480 voters for any one article. So yes, library drove that, but
Last fall or last spring?
last fall, so last spring was even less. So last fall was only like 480.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the library, you're right. Last fall, we peaked at around 200 voters. So
At the first library meeting?
No.
The gym was.
for the March one, for the March
No, no.
meeting, yes?
Oh, no, I was talking about the
Fall town meeting.
fall town meeting.
Well, that's what I thought. The last fall town was October, right?
Right,
That was the one that peaked at around 480.
okay.
So
For the library vote, it was a pretty large turnout, and I thought we had like close to 1,000 voters there.
Yeah.
And then in December, we had like another 12 or
First one.
1,500, so.
Well, maybe we're thinking of the second one, one of those ones really.
So the
built up.
second one
And we didn't
was the
really print very many
gymnasium.
books.
the
at
December
all,
one
yeah.
was 1,200 people,
Yeah, okay.
1,244.
So maybe
Right.
we're confused.
So I guess I'm just thinking if 300, because the first one did have the library as well.
Yeah,
Um,
the
means
400 may
that-
be a more logical number possibly,
Well,
but.
it also means that a lot of people aren't going digitally. I mean, a lot of
Oh.
people are still relying, I guess the arc I'm trying to cover here is that a lot of people, in spite of the fact that digital would seem to make the most sense for a lot of people, a lot of folks are still, at least 60% were relying on the hard copy if we were printing 300 of them. So
Yeah, well, you get to mark it up with your pencil and.
all kinds
all
of good
sorts
things to be done,
reasons to
sure,
do that,
sure.
right, yeah.
But I guess it just sort of surprises me as I'm kicking the number around in my head that the adoption, the digital adoption isn't higher, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what we
Internet's
should do is
still
pay a
one.
little bit of attention at the
Internet is
end
a
of this
terrible of the
meeting
school.
about how many copies actually got used, because that can help us plan for the spring too.
yeah, but the point that Jane makes, the internet at the school is terrible. So having it digitally that nobody can access is not having it, like
Yeah.
Could be.
fundamentally.
I think you found it. Okay. Any further comments? Okay, we have motion for 500. We still are all here, so we can vote. All in favor? All right, so that is, what are we?
7.
700. In favor? And now, our star of the show, Miss Christie Williams, our town manager.
I don't know if it matters, but I'm I'm not seeing any WTV visual when I'm on the Zoom meeting, so I don't know if Westboro TV can turn on the camera or not, but it doesn't matter. I'm still listening, but I just want to let you know that I'm not seeing any video.
Oh. There's nothing I can do. I know that. Hopefully it's on Westboro TV though.
Should we knock on those lights? Somebody in there?
Yeah.
Dave.
It is on.
Yeah.
YouTube.
Don't hold up for my account. I just wanted to let people know in case it mattered.
No, most assuredly not. Goodness.
Okay.
Now I can see. Thanks.
Oh, he's good. There we go. Thank you. Okay, so first thing we're going to talk about, therefore, is the community center. As background, Christy has been here before with the initial presentation. It was right after it kind of got announced publicly, and we were all shell-shocked enough to know that we wanted to hear more and ask a lot more questions. Since then, the frequently asked question page has been up, which answered a lot of our questions and other people's questions. Do you have a presentation you want to go through first in some fashion, or?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. And then we'll ask questions. Yep.
So this is the presentation that we've been giving at the public information sessions. So I can try to move through it a little more quickly. So as you know, we have the opportunity to purchase this property. That's Articles 3 and 4 on the the fall town meeting warrant. The first article, I just want to make the distinction. So the first article is authorization for the board to purchase the property. So just being really clear with everyone that just because it gets voted at town meeting doesn't mean that it has to get purchased, understanding that there's some due diligence that needs to be completed. And that's always how these acquisitions are structured, because the board is the authority in real estate transactions. It's also to appropriate or to authorize the board to borrow $8.8 million for that purchase. And then the second article, which we'll talk about, is related to operating costs, public engagement, due diligence. So I showed you this last time I was here, just kind of going back to the fact that in 2012, when we started talking about renovating the Forbes Municipal Building, there was concern about the loss of the gym in that building. It was a school, so the recreation department had authority over that gym, and so there was a lot of concern about that because we knew we had to make the police department bigger. And so at the time, this sketch was developed as an idea for a recreation center that would be built at the same time so that we wouldn't lose the gym. And this is just a gymnasium with classroom and offices. Obviously, the Forbes Municipal Building moved forward, and this did not. When we were going to purchase the Westborough State Hospital property, the recreation director at the time and the commission commissioned a third party to come in and do this conceptual design of the property. So it's just a conceptual design. It didn't go further than that. Our recreation director has referenced it as they started to build fields. It does include a community center. We don't have any documents that articulate exactly what would have been in the community center. Rather, we just know that they were anticipating a 26,000 square foot community center when they did this design. In 2018, our strategic plan created a list of priorities for the community, and so one of them was to design and build an intergenerational community center with activities for all ages. In 2021, we did the master plan. So the master plan came out with several goals. That was through, as you all know, a robust public engagement process. One of the goals is open space and recreation, goal number 3, which talks about the need to provide public recreation programs and facilities, and it included a community center in the goal. Action items related to the community center included investigating the feasibility of constructing a community center, expanding indoor and outdoor recreation, and even investigating the provision of a municipal pool or splash park. In public facilities, goal number 3 is to align the town's facilities with the community's diverse needs and long-term vision. Action items related to the community center were exploring the potential for a community center, as well as evaluating the need to expand the town's existing senior center. And then in the economic development chapters, we have economic development goal number 3, which talks about the improvement of Westborough's major shopping centers, and it specifically calls out Bay State. So the action items include promoting mixed-use development in and around Bay State, exploring the potential for incorporating more entertainment-driven uses for youth and the larger population within Bay State, making it more visible and accessible and welcoming, and then also incorporating teen-friendly amenities. Fast forward to 2023, we just recently completed our senior needs assessment. That senior needs assessment, the methods for creating that report were key informant interviews, focus groups, and then a community survey, which was mailed out to every household that has folks 55 and older. And it was also available for anyone to take online. So through the key informant interviews, participants raised concerns about the physical location of the existing senior center, talking about the traffic patterns and being challenging and potentially dangerous, and then the desire to have, for the space to have more active and physical offerings for seniors. Through the focus groups, participants identified several factors that they feel deter participation at the Westborough Senior Center, including the perceived condition of the building, stating that the senior center is largely inaccessible, strong concern for driver safety again, and then just that it deters residents from considering it a viable resource. Also, through the focus groups, it was noted that older residents feel a sense of being undervalued in the community. Overall, focus group participants emphasized that many residents strongly recognize what they feel is a reluctance on the part of the town to allocate resources and to offer supports. And then one of the key findings of the whole report was that the physical space of the senior center does not meet the current needs. Recommendations included considering updating the physical space, the potential for engaging the community for input and creation of a Westborough Community Center. So we'll talk more about that. And then also the need to continue and strengthen collaboration between town departments. So when we were presented with this opportunity, we felt that that really spoke to a lot of the guiding documents which have been developed through several public engagement processes over the last decade. The price, as you know, is $8.8 million. The select board they negotiate an executive session. That's part of their role. They negotiate an executive session per Mass General Law. And so when they got to the point where they were comfortable with the negotiation and had a number, that's when we were able to present it to the community. So that's about $139 per square foot, that $8.8 million. Estimated new construction, we were told to estimate $800 per square foot if we were gonna do a ground up build. If you're gonna do the same size building, obviously in 2012 or 2016, we were talking about 26,000 square feet, but same size building would be over $50 million. That $800 per square foot was actually further validated if you look at the Upton Community Center that was recently built. That's about 15,000 square feet, just over $12 million. And that center houses a senior center and library. So we estimated what the tax impact would be based on a 5% interest rate. We feel that that's conservative, and so we won't know until we borrow, but wanted to give everyone an idea of what the tax impact might be. So it's an average of $84 per average single family over the life of the borrow, with the highest cost being in the first year, that $113.52. So it's not just the building, it's also some of the parking around it. And so in total, it's 2.58 acres. Westborough TV did a virtual tour of the building. It's about 3 minutes. I can turn it on. I've been showing it at the sunset sessions. I don't know if you've all seen it. I think it's really good if you haven't seen it, so.
Have you seen it? No?
3 minutes.
No? Okay.
All right, I'll play it, okay, great.
This is Westborough TV showing Westborough TV.
So that's the virtual tour of the building. It's difficult to see sort of the openness of the first floor because Spirit Halloween is in there. Certainly you can tell that the walls that they've put up to sort of create their retail space are fake walls, and so would easily come down, as Spirit Halloween's model is to move on after Halloween. So the first floor, again, a very open floor plan, 31,000 square feet, was previously occupied by Steinmart. There's a couple photos here that just give you a little bit better vision of what it looks like when there isn't a retailer in there. The second floor, you saw a lot of that in the video. This is Boston Sports Club, so I think one of the things that I really want to point out is, and you saw in the video, is that this space is already partitioned with different rooms. So it's immediately available for meeting room space, use of the basketball court. That lower box in the lower left-hand corner with the 3 circles, that's that, it said studio when they were going in, and so that's sort of like a multi-purpose room. You could have exercise classes or other games going on. In that kind of corner next to the basketball court, that's a cycling studio, so that creates a whole other area that you could run a program. And then on the right, as you walk in, I'm just trying to figure out how to navigate. So on the right as you walk in, those 2 sort of rectangles there, those are both, one's a birthday party room, or that's how it was used, and then the other one is a meeting room space with a bathroom off of it. So really set up immediately for use by our recreation department. And then there's offices there, that sort of curved wall. There's offices in there, and then there's those desks. But just really wanted to make the point that when we look at the Boston Sports Club, we look at lots and lots of exercise equipment. That is not part of the sale. We've been negotiating with the building owner, not the building tenant. And so the building would be room clean when we receive it. That being said, there's that whole public engagement piece that we would want to go through, and if the public ultimately decided that that's something that they would want available to them, then we would have to figure that out, if that was something that was going to be added in. So I just mentioned what the plan would be with the immediate move of the recreation department to that building. Currently, our senior center is 8,600 square feet. We talked about this last time I was here. So it's certainly much smaller than that 31,000 square feet available on the first floor. Our recreation director and our senior center director have thought about different ways that they would be able to use the space. So this is a slide that's been available for, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks. And so just really talking about, so maybe you've seen it, but the availability of the building for the recreation department to do vacation and holiday programming, immediately doing programming after school during the day, things that they can't do right now because they have to access the school buildings, which are in their own programs, and athletics and things like that. For the senior center, I'm sure you've all been in it. There's really 2 rooms that can be programmed. Understanding that large room, if you put 2 events in there, there's sometimes issues with noise. And so the opportunity to run more programs in parallel is really what we see as a huge opportunity for this building. These are some other possible programming. So we have the youth programs and adult, but then the community programs is something I want to highlight. Youth and Family Services run speaker programs. They do bingo nights with the police department. Veterans events could happen there. Elections, we would really love to be able to do elections over there so that we can keep all of our election equipment in that building, take it out for the election, and not impact the school day. So that's something that we think would be great over there. Library could do programs there. What's not on here that should be is meeting rooms. We know that there is a shortage of meeting rooms. We hear it all the time from the community. And as I mentioned, there's rooms available. It would be available immediately on that second floor for meeting space. In considering the pool, so the pool exists, so our recreation director has reached out to some other community centers that have pools. She's also talked to the folks who currently run the pool at Boston Sports Club. The way that works is it's a contracted third party, so there's the there's a contract, they run all the swim lessons, they do water aerobics, they do all the classes, they do birthday parties, they take care of all of the testing that's required of the water, and they employ all the lifeguards. And so that's something that we would anticipate exploring if we were to move into that space, specifically understanding that we've had a difficult time recruiting lifeguards for the beach. The community center, we would anticipate expanded hours. So this is just, this is based on schedules that our recreation director has seen at other community centers. It's not set in stone, but it's really to show the point that we would be open beyond town hall hours. And then when we talk about costs associated with the purchase, there's several different sort of buckets of that. The first is Article 3, as I mentioned, that's the borrow, the $8.8 million, and that would pay the cost of the acquisition. Article 4 is a free cash article. We're estimating just under $200,000 for that article. And that would fund the public engagement that we've talked about. So the commitment to public engagement is to hear from the community exactly what they are looking for in that lower level, understanding that it would serve the senior center, and then the community at large. So we received an estimate of about $85,000 to do charrette work, to interview stakeholders and come up with a schematic design that would lead us to the final cost for the construction that we could bring to town meeting for fit up. There's also estimated maintenance and utilities. So we've based our maintenance and utilities on the Forbes Municipal Building, it being about 15% smaller than the building that we're discussing. So we've added 15% to our FY24 numbers for maintenance and utilities. And then we're also asking for some additional funding related, so I should say that maintenance and utilities would typically be an operating budget item. Because we don't know when we would take possession of the building, we're proposing it as a free cash, and then it would go into the FY25 operating budget. Estimated due diligence is about $35,000, and that includes all of the inspections. So inspections of the pool, all the systems, the roof, the structure, the environmental assessments. So all of the assessments that we would do prior to purchasing the property, and that would have to be satisfactory to the select board for them to move forward with the purchase. And then looking ahead to FY25 budget items, we look at carrying costs. So the estimated maintenance, as I mentioned, that's 15% more than we use for the Forbes Municipal Building. Same with estimated utilities. Estimated common area maintenance, so we would enter into a reciprocal agreement with the rest of the property for outdoor upkeep, so plowing, landscaping, lighting, things like that. So we would be a party to this common area maintenance agreement. It would also, as part of that agreement, also reciprocal easements, so we would have full access to their parking and they would have full access to our parking. And looking at estimated additional personnel costs, we've identified the need for a community center manager that would be in the recreation department budget, an additional custodian through the DPW budget, and then we would increase the program and volunteer coordinator hours from 25 to 40 hours in the senior center. So, so those additional personnel are specifically personnel that we would anticipate putting into the operating budget. That is not all of the additional personnel we expect to need, and I'll get into that on the next slide. So the funding source of that would be the operating budget. Using these estimates, it would be about $67 to the average single family, and then if you add that in FY25 to the first year of the borrow, it's about $180 to the average single family. The way program costs would work would be similar to how we currently operate, where the recreation department has a revolving account. Every program that they run, the fees come in, then they use that, they expend those fees to run recreation programs. Sometimes they're free, sometimes they're offsetting costs using the recreation revolving account. They also use this fund currently to staff the beach and staff our playground program, and that's exactly what would happen under the community center. So part-time attendance, which we would anticipate needing, would be paid for through the recreation revolving account, understanding that they would be supporting the ability to run recreation programs during the day in that space and later at night. The senior center, similar, they do have a budget. They don't have a revolving account. However, they do pay for a lot of their programming directly. They pay directly to the instructor because they bring a lot of instructors in. And then they also pay for a lot of things through their grants that they receive through the state and other things. So anticipating that the program costs would continue with a similar model without an impact to the operating budget. And this is just to kind of show, this is specific, so this shows what the staffing would look like so that community center manager is new. This is really mostly, let's see. Yeah. So also there's the increase in hours for that program and volunteer coordinator, which is right above the community center manager, and then the additional attendance and aquatic staff. If we were to do a contract, the contract also would be paid for through the revolving account, exactly how we currently operate all of our programs. And then there would be a future town meeting article. So once we received schematic design based on the public engagement, we would go to town meeting with a request to fund the fit up. There are several available funds that would be that might be accessed to pay for the fit up. So one of them is sale of real estate. Sale of real estate account is any money that the town has received through selling their real estate. The money has to go into sale of real estate. It can only be used for anything for which the town would borrow, so it's not an offset to the operating budget. If we were to sell the senior center after moving, then this would obviously increase, and then you could use it to pay down debt for the project. The Pulte payments, which I think some of you are familiar with, we receive a payment of $642,857.15 from Pulte every time they get an occupancy permit in their development of their project up at the state hospital. That money can only be used for affordable housing and to support seniors. To date, most of them, we've made, I think, 2 transfers from the stabilization account to the Affordable Housing Trust. And remains a balance of over $2 million, understanding that we would receive additional payments. And so because it would be to support seniors, it could help pay for that fit up. And then the Community Preservation Act funds, understanding that there's a process, we would have to go through a process, but those may be available for some use in this space. I think a lot of what we're hearing is the unknown of this article. We appreciate that. We understand. Obviously, the ideal would have been to move through this public engagement process first and then have a full number. That being said, we're unable to do that. This is a time-sensitive purchase. And given the openness of the space and the information that we have about the building currently, we feel that it would be a lower cost fit up and that we would potentially be able to cover it with available funds. That being said, if someone were to say they wanted to add another pool or put in 4 elevators or do something structural, like that obviously is going to make this impossible to cover it with available funds. These are just some ideas. I would say we know that we need a commercial kitchen in that space because we know that we need that to support the senior center. The good news is there's a lot of we have a commercial kitchen now. So a lot of the equipment that they currently have is actually fairly new. We could move it into the new space. They have a lot of furniture that we could move into the new space that this has been recently purchased. Would likely be a need for some additional bathroom facilities. And then the need for windows on the sides because currently there's only windows in the front. So we anticipate those things when we're talking about the fit up. This is the proposed timeline. So on Tuesday, the select board will consider signing of the purchase and sale agreement. That's been negotiated over time. One of the contingencies of that is obviously the town meeting vote. So it doesn't require the town meeting to vote for it. That is specifically a contingency. If the town meeting doesn't vote for it, the purchase and sale is gone. And then we go to town meeting on the 16th. And then we would start working on plans for community engagement, understanding that we would start that once we close on the property, which would be in the spring. If we were able to move quickly enough, we may have that article ready for the fall town meeting next year. And that is about the public information session. So I have 9 pages of FAQ, which you all have. I also have another 25 to 30 questions from all of you. The questions in my FAQ are mostly from the Finance Committee. So I'm happy to walk through the ones that haven't yet been added, if that's helpful. Because they'll be added tomorrow. I just have them ready now, so.
I mean, I think a lot of them that were sent were redundant in a sense too, but.
Yeah. Okay.
How do people want to ask questions or go through the list, or?
I think it'd be worthwhile to, the 25 that aren't on the FAQ, if they're not repetitive.
Okay. I can do that pretty quickly.
Okay.
Given the cost of sustaining the pool, maintenance liability, et cetera, is there an option during fit up to remove the pool? The town has not decided to remove the pool yet, but hopes that engagement with the community at large will help inform that town's decision. So yes, we could remove the pool, but that's part of the public engagement process. What are the ages, quality of the large capital components of the property, roofs, floors, the gym, HVAC, ADA, electrical infrastructure, IT infrastructure? As I mentioned, the town's currently doing the due diligence, and so all of that will come out of that. So we're looking at all of those systems. What's the current cost profile of the existing senior center, including annual cost of ownership? So we budget the maintenance and utilities for the senior center in FY24 was totaled at $57,578. So yes, there would be a savings. It's about $7 to the average single family. That's why it's not in my presentation. And it would be in the future once we moved the senior center and then we sold the building. Are there any other town properties that could be repurposed, sold into the new building if it was purchased? There are no other properties besides the senior center that could be repurposed as a result of this purchase. The board is assessing the long-term use of other buildings such as the Harvey Building and Forbes Community Building. So as a result of this purchase, even though we're looking at those other buildings, we wouldn't, and the use of that building isn't anticipated to move into this new use. Is there an opportunity for a public works project to pull traffic through alternate routes to get to from the facility so that all traffic doesn't have to go through downtown? This is not currently included in any plans. As previously mentioned, we do not anticipate, because of where it's gonna go. So we don't anticipate traffic to increase more than when the site was permitted. So if it was a fully functioning, fully occupied site, there's no anticipation that traffic will be more than that when it was permitted. Has the draft purchase and sales been assembled? Yes. Have any exclusivity documents been executed? And if so, were there any funds attached to it? And when does it expire? No, there were no exclusivity documents. And there were no funds expended on the negotiations except for working with town council. So did the negotiations and ultimate sales price include any restrictive covenants on behalf of the purchaser? For example, without limitation, are we anticipated to agree to any type of non-solicit for existing tenants of the complex? There are currently no restrictions on the town's use of the property. The restrictions, if any, will be negotiated by the parties under the reciprocal easement agreement. Why wasn't an independent real estate agent used by the town to assess comparator properties in the area for benchmarks on the price? The town retained an experienced commercial property appraiser who looked at comparative properties and was selected through the procurement process to appraise the market price of the property. I know some of you I've emailed the appraisal to you. If you haven't had it yet or you want to look at it, it's on the website. Who negotiated the price and overall deal structure? Was it directly between the board and the seller, or was this through outside counsel? If it was through outside counsel, was it town counsel or counsel with expertise in commercial real estate, and who, if so? So the select board negotiated the purchase. That's part of what they do. That's part of what their charge is to negotiate real estate. So they worked with KP Law, which is our town council, to structure the overall offer. The KP Law is a team of attorneys, so they have expertise in several areas, including real estate negotiations, procurement, and environmental issues. Was an engineering assessment completed? If so, where are the results and who performed the survey? We're working with a vendor to get that accomplished right now. Was an environmental survey completed? Same answer. We're working with vendors right now. Who initiated the discussions? The seller or the town? The town did. Does the town have knowledge of any interested third parties or other bidders? It's our understanding that the owner did not advertise the property for sale. The town is aware that there were private parties who were interested in leasing the property, but we weren't a party to those discussions. For any of the activities where funds were expended, where did they originate? And as I mentioned, we didn't expend any funds except with the exception of working with town council. That came out of the legal budget. As we start to do some of this due diligence, that's coming out of legal, DPW, and the town manager's budget, so that we could get as much information as quickly as we could. But again, that's being asked for at the town meeting. Has the title search been performed? It's being conducted right now. Are we, the town, aware of any defects to the property, structure, or surrounding property? We're in our due diligence process. Is the seller willing to give the standard reps and warrants? For example, without limitation against any liens? Yes, the seller is providing standard representations and warranties, which will survive the closing for a period of 1 year. Do we know if the facility is fully ADA compliant, or do we anticipate additional costs to upgrade the amenities? As you all know, when we talk about Hastings, the cost of construction could trigger need to come into compliance. Currently, there's no identified deficiencies that would prevent us from using the building immediately, but we would need to be compliant with ADA. Do we consider a lease with an option to buy? We answered this on our first FAQ about a lease. Given the amount of money that the town anticipates investing in the property, we did not move forward with the lease, but we did talk about it. What safety considerations have been made regarding the indoor pool? The proposed budget does not allude to lifeguards, so I did mention that, or how the insurance liability on such a building will be impacted by an open access community pool. Cost, let's see. In talking to our insurance company, there's no additional liability. There's a recreation statute that protects us from use of the pool. In terms of insuring the building, we've been told that that could be $5,000 to $10,000, which we would be able to absorb in our insurance budget. What was the owner's final figure in the market analysis of the property? We understand that the owner values the property at $9 million. Did we consider approaching Boston Sports Club about buying some of the low-impact equipment? No. If the town decides to purchase the property and community engagement wants those things, that's certainly something that we could pursue. To date, we have not evaluated the value or the condition of that equipment, so that hasn't been part of the discussion, and I'm not sure, what the town's interest would be. So those are all those questions. All the other ones are in the FAQ. I think I got some more from Rod this afternoon, so happy to answer those too, but I don't have them ready to go into the FAQ yet.
Rod, any ones from that list you want to hit?
No, first of all, thank you, Christy, for all your work, and I'm very happy you talk fast because.
Sorry. Sorry.
No, it keeps it going. No, I know that a lot of effort has been put into this, and I appreciate seizing the day. And it's easy to second guess when you're sitting on the sidelines and don't have all the background. The questions I asked Christy today, and thanks for sharing the assessment as well. But one of the things on the assessment was the subject is listed as a confirmed disposal site in the transition list of confirmed disposal sites and locations to be investigated. And I just wanted to make sure that we fully understand, what the impacts are of purchasing a property that has DEP filings.
Yeah, so that's a good question, and I guess I would say that that's actually probably why it took us longer to come out to the community with this opportunity than we had hoped, because we were spending so much time talking about and negotiating on the environmental piece. So the structure of the P&S does provide for indemnification for the town. It reduces our liability to just our portion of the property. If you went onto the Registry of Deeds, you probably saw that there's some agreements on there. So we have done that due diligence in understanding that and making sure that we're indemnified for that. So that P&S will be available as well once the board considers it.
Just curious in terms of, and I guess in general, in terms of the negotiation, what is the time is of the essence? Why is that important to the owner, and why would we be signing a purchase and sale 6 days before the town meeting?
So because the purchase and sale puts forward the structure of the offer. So that's what the board has agreed to. We've signed purchase and sales prior to town meeting before, because one of the contingencies is always that town meeting vote. So again, town meeting can vote up or down. If they vote it down, we're not required to do anything under the purchase and sale agreement. The urgency around it, the seller has a tenant that is leaving. Their lease is expiring, so that's Boston Sports Club. And so they would, if we're not going to purchase the property, they would be in the process of getting additional tenants. They've also, as everyone knows, have purchased the property more recently. So even though that lower level has been vacant for a considerable amount of time, as the new owners, they've actually already brought some additional tenants into that space. So, they have offered us the opportunity to purchase the property. We've all negotiated in good faith, but ultimately, as business owners, they would like to get someone in that property if the town isn't going to move forward.
So, in terms of the assessment, maybe this is something John could help us out with.
That's why he's here.
That's why I don't want your visit to come unnoticed, John. So perhaps you could give us a little tutorial in terms of, the town assesses it at $2 million, based on the whole plaza, and then we get an assessment of $6 million, and then we ask the purchase price is, $9 million or $8.8 million. So tell us how that
Sure.
ranges.
John
what that
Steinberg,
all
Chief
means.
Assessor. So starting with the assessment from the assessor's perspective, we're doing a mass appraisal model on the entirety of the property, okay? Taking into consideration that you have two big boxes there, one being a gym facility with a pool, another being a particular type of retail tenant, okay? But it's in the context of the overall property, okay? When you get in real estate, you often have sort of the opposite, where the sum of the parts is greater sometimes than the value of the whole. If you bought a 3-family, you will pay less for it than you would if you split it up into 3 condos and sold the 3 condos, okay? That can be very common in real estate, okay? The appraisal was just for that building, okay? Taking that building out of that context and looking at that building as it would be free and standing. So you're looking at a little bit of a different model than you would be from the overall assessment standpoint, okay? And then when you get into the purchase price relative to the appraisal price, it's like anything in real estate. A seller wants to sell something for as much as he can, and a buyer's going to pay what the market will dictate. And as we know, many times in real estate, things go over asking and over value. It just is a function of what one person is asking and one another is willing to pay in competing markets. If there are certain landlords who put more time and effort into leasing property. The prior owner, from what I understand, did not put a lot of time and effort, as you could tell by the improvements that they did in the property itself, whether they be infrastructure, landscaping, and everything else. And those things benefit the surrounding tenants. I mean, since this Grossman took over, they've already renewed many of the leases and done things to improve the property, which only help all the other units within the complex. So that's sort of the distinction between the 3 different types of valuation. And just to address one thing relative to the sale price and their $11 million, there's a few facets of that make that $11 million not a real number. The first being it was not a market sale, okay? A market sale being an arm's length transaction sold between a willing buyer and a willing seller without undue influence. This was a deed in lieu of foreclosure, okay? There was someone writing off the net balance of a loan of which the loan was purchased, the interest in the loan was purchased by Grossman previously. So even the $11 million isn't fully representative of what investment they made in the cash flow of it. And then what the lender was writing off on that, we don't know. But it not being a market transaction, you don't have market exposure, you don't have the criteria necessary to make it an arm's length transaction. Did I answer your question?
Thank you.
Okay.
I guess, and does Grossman really want to sell us the property, or we just, I mean, so they're asking 50% more than the appraised value. So it leads me to believe that, you know, if we want to buy it for more than it's appraised, that's fine. But, I mean, how would they just as soon lease it to somebody else as have us purchase it? Maybe you can't answer that.
Well, I guess all I can say is that, you know, we believe that they were negotiating in good faith. So I don't believe that they were not. And if that were the case, that they actually didn't want to sell it, I think that would be negotiating in bad faith. So I think one of the other things that, I mean, we have purchased, as a town, we've purchased property over the appraised value before, and it has to do with, you know, what John just said, which is the sort of the value to the community. So specifically, I'm talking about the Daypray property a couple years ago. And so in the FAQ, you can see, and I just want to bring it back to this slide. You know, for consideration was really one of the pieces to consider in terms of, you know, maybe how we got to over appraised value is the value of having a building in a location that checks a lot of the boxes that the community has identified as those boxes, with location, revitalizing downtown, connectivity, walkability, being able to deal with the needs of the senior center, and also the fact that it would cost a lot more money if we were to build new. So those are some factors to consider when we think about the price and how we arrived at it.
Did they have a appraisal that got them to $9 million? Or how did they justify their number, I guess is?
They did their own market analysis.
Did they share it with you? Or?
That's not a public record, yeah.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Beth,
I apologize because I didn't send you this question.
use the mic, Beth.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize because I didn't send you this question in advance. It might be in frequent questions. But has the school been involved in terms of access to the swimming pool and use for the swim team?
Have they been involved? No.
Yeah, okay.
Will they have the opportunity to use the facility? Definitely. So,
Okay.
the pool is, it's not big enough. I mean, the pool
That's
is
what I
very
was wondering
small.
about.
Yeah, I mean, so Jen can speak to this better than me, but, you know, some of the programs that we currently run, like Special Olympics, could access, you can get up, you can take over.
So short answer, no, I haven't talked to the schools. Like Chrissy said, they'd be welcome to explore it, but as far as I know, I think it's too small for a swim team and official swim meets. Things that we were thinking of are swim lessons, Special Olympic swimming. Right now, we run Special Olympic swimming with another local pool, and they're great partners. They give us what they can, which is very minimal. So we would have access to the entire pool for that program. Some senior aerobics, water aerobics, things like of that nature. And then, you know, we have kind of thought about some open like lap swim for people as well. More recreational than official like swim meets and things like that.
But maybe a lot of swim lessons?
Yeah, I think swim lessons like the contractor that, the vendor that Christy was talking about prior, they do a lot of swim lessons. They do the senior water aerobics. They do basically any kind of recreational swimming activities you can think of. They run those classes. So that's the path that I'm thinking of going down.
Okay.
Do they do life-saving training?
They
So
actually-
you might get more lifeguards?
They do. They do lifeguard classes. They do. They also do something great for seniors. It's called, I forget the official name of it, but they teach grandparents how to swim with little kids so that if something were to ever happen in the pool and you were in there with a small child, it's kind of like life-saving skills like that. So, yeah.
Cool. Okay. Andrew?
So I have some observations. I was at the public meeting yesterday, and I have some observations that came specifically around the community center, and it's a space where I have some observations for opportunity and some concerns that come up as well, considering what we've talked about here. The opportunity conversation, I think, comes from one of the observations from one of the folks who attended, who was hearing that for the first time, I think for them, and you know, people are hearing it different things, that the full 30,000 feet for the senior center wasn't going to be for the senior center, that it could be for other things. And there was a concern there, but I think the real opportunity, and you started to get to this, and I've looked in the fact, and I don't think it really plays it up enough, is the reality is that there's an opportunity for 50,000 square feet of programming for seniors, because I'm not sure what constitutes the senior center. I suspect that there's some spaces that are very specifically tailored for senior center, would be 24/7, like offices or a couple of things. But when you talk about public spaces, we have a huge opportunity here, and I think you really started to talk to that, but I think the fact that we're talking about an 8,000 square foot versus a 30,000 square, no, we have potentially 50,000 square feet of programmable space for seniors. So I look at that as an opportunity to put what the senior center opportunity is in that regard.
Yeah, no, good point, and thank you. Certainly, all this helps improve the presentation, but certainly, as Jen was just talking about potential senior programs in the pool is equally available to the seniors. That yoga studio, multi-purpose room. I mean, they already do exercise classes at the senior center. That would be available as well. The basketball court. So it's not. The idea is not that, seniors on the bottom floor, everybody else on the top. It's not like that at all. It's really
No one over 50.
yeah.
That much closer to the ground.
It really
if you
is.
know what I mean.
It's a full, and that's really from the senior needs assessment. We heard that the seniors in the community wanted to see more collaboration between departments, and this just underscores that. So recreation, senior center, potentially library, youth and family. I mean, it's a community center, and it's fully available throughout the building. Yeah.
And I think that's an important point.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many people are concerned as she was. And I think it came up again from another person coming at a slightly different angle. But I think that this is such a tremendous opportunity. On the opposite side of a concern that I have in terms of sort of the way we're looking at this, and you actually spoke to this, one of the things about the current senior center is at least one of those spaces is smaller. It's got a lot of furniture, a lot of cushioning. Sound dampening comes to mind, and you alluded to the fact that the second room might not be so good because of noise, but here we're talking about turning over a cavern to people, and that seems to me to suggest that if we wanted to use it optimally for an audience that is, harder of hearing or more susceptible to noise, that there would have to be a more material impact of the change to make it ideally suited for, the senior uses. For smaller groups. And
Yeah.
the arc there is that I worry that we're underestimating how much the upfit would cost to have these huge cavernous spaces being properly fitted for, that sort of thing. To me, that concerns me a
Sure.
lot.
So two responses, I guess. I don't think this is what you meant, but I thought you were going there, so I'll say it anyway. There is a concern about noise from the basketball court. And so that's something that we would have to look into in terms of soundproofing or how we laid out the space. Right now, also, you can hear weights like crash onto the floor. We don't anticipate using the space that same way, but certainly understanding that there's a need to be able to run very different programs in the different spaces and not have noise disturbance. So that's something that will be part of that discussion and potential fit up. I don't think we're underestimating the fit up because we're not estimating it at all. We really don't. We could have something as basic as a commercial kitchen going in, reusing the equipment. I mean, we've been told that commercial kitchens can cost anywhere from $200,000 to $750,000, depending on what we're talking about. So that's something that we know we need, and then we're talking about walls in terms of running additional plumbing and things like that, light and electricity. Our expectation is that is not going to be tens of millions of dollars. So our expectation is that we would be able to cover it through some of these available funds. But we don't know. And so I think we've been really honest about that, that we don't have an accurate, or we don't have an actual estimate. But the space is there, and we wouldn't anticipate turning it over until it was fit up to be these rooms. Because some of the things that we've talked about, or that I've heard, seniors talk about, everybody talk about, the need for a music room, the need for a pool room, a computer lab, all these things. And those ideas, all speak to the fact that we need separate spaces to run separate programming because we can't have one giant cavernous room.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'd also point out they're very tall. And when I think about what's happening in the Harvey building, we have a bunch of Boy Scout stuff stored in a basement there and a couple of working rooms. It would be fairly, like, to me, that there's an obvious step that has to come up in the larger conversation to portion out a section of that area where we build a second floor, part of which becomes storage for things like the voting equipment, and that provides that buffer you need for, making smaller spaces where people can work and having additional storage space so we can clear out Harvey and hello, we sell another building.
There you go.
Problem solved.
I mean, there is we do have a need for storage, especially when we're talking about the senior center, elections, recreation. We know that there's a need for storage. I wish I could go back to different parts in the video, but the sort of like unfinished looking space that you saw, that's
The sheetrock wasn't painted, that
Yeah.
area.
yes, thank you.
Like the
So
narrow
it's,
hallways,
Yeah.
sort of.
maybe I can pull it up, but it exists in the back of the lower level. Oh, it's not even in.
I said that video would benefit from having a small map in the corner that says this is where you're looking. Because as it is, it's just like, let's wander
look,
like
I found it
senior
immediately.
centers.
So this space
seniors.
here,
But
this
we
is
can't see it. We can't see it.
oh,
Like this.
see?
Are the
That's great,
lights
right?
off?
Sorry.
In this version, are the lights off?
All right.
Gotta be on the TV.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the back on the,
Is it not?
that's huge. I want to know what's in the turret there at the top.
I don't know why it's not.
Where they put the fireworks. Yeah.
That's why they're doing the due diligence. Find out what's up there.
Find out what's up there. Or
Is it not?
That's in the
Oh, here we
belfry.
go.
Front. Ghosts and. Because they got that little spooky stuff. Like lighthousey looking.
Okay.
thing at the top.
Here we go. So I'll turn the music down.
These are
But so
low
this exists behind the first level. So it has the loading dock, and then it actually has this little mezzanine here. So there is existing storage there. That creates that 2-floor. If you start talking about adding a whole nother second floor, that available funds discussion goes away.
Not 30,000
Yeah,
square feet
okay.
of it, but again, there's a portion that I think seniors would benefit from smaller, less noisy spaces.
I think what you're saying is exactly what we're anticipating. So probably a large space for community dinners and things like that. But then the smaller spaces to do all different kinds of programming and having them sort of set up. I know that right now they have a piano and people like to come in and play the piano, and I'm told that some people come in and it's beautiful, but you might be doing something that's not really working with the piano being played. So like a music room that has some ability to take that activity to a more reasonable space and all different things.
I feel like that my small space conversation is going in two dimensions, in a different dimension. You're talking about small spaces with walls to make it more cozy.
Yeah.
I'm talking about ceilings coming down and being able to utilize additional space above it potentially. Not 30,000 square feet. I get it. That's
Yeah.
a deal breaker.
So we would have to
but-
figure that out through the public engagement process. It's certainly high enough to do what you're describing.
Yep.
There's a faux ceiling so that it doesn't feel so gigantic, so that's available as well.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, like drop ceiling versus a mezzanine is a much different price, right?
Mhm.
Anybody else with specific questions?
So I have a question specific to the financing.
Mm-hmm.
So I assume we're issuing tax-exempt bonds. Does that not come with private use restrictions? And do we have any concerns with the potential use of this space and private use restrictions on the bond proceeds?
We don't have any concern with getting a bond for the space.
Well, so with municipal bonds, right, don't you have a limitation of 10% of the space can be used for you could have 10% bad use, right? So 10% of the bond, 10% of the time or money could be spent on. So the reason I ask, there is a reference to, we could consider the option of leasing out space or something like that. I assume that would be an issue with your bond covenants because you would have the 10% private use restrictions on tax exempt bonds.
We don't have a concern, but I guess backing up even from that is that's all part of the discussion. So we haven't, we haven't articulated that there would absolutely be a lease space. I know some people think that we should do that, but that's not, we haven't taken that any further.
For instance, if you lease to the borough program instead of them leasing a building, that's still probably a good.
Town use.
Right, so
A
the
good town
borough
use.
problem would still be good use, yes.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
so
So
it really
that
just
wouldn't
depends.
affect
But
it
if you
at all.
decided to operate a cafe, you decide to operate a cafe and it was managed by someone else, the pool space being managed by a third-party vendor could create private use, which could in theory be bad use. And granted, you have a 10% allowance within your bond covenants, but there is the potential, right, as you start to let a management contract generates bad use in a space. Sorry, the term bad use sounds very dramatic. It's just the term that people use. I don't mean that to be.
Pejorative.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say except that this is what we're proposing is very similar to how other community centers run. We don't have any concern. Bond council certainly looked at the article and we've discussed it, so I'm not concerned. So.
In any case, I guess during your engagement phase and making plans, that all can be investigated.
Right. I mean, there's all sorts of things. So if people do want to have a cafe, there's who runs the cafe. Really, the idea of the cafe is so that seniors can go in and get, because it would be in the senior center space, like a muffin and coffee. It's not sort of a large.
But I think it's a great idea. The question, from my perspective, really comes more back to financing, right? So if you intend to lease out a portion of the space or operate some sort of management contract in more than that 10% of the space, you could always issue some portion of the bonds taxable, which comes at a higher rate. But that's a decision you have to make before you issue debt.
Right.
And that was really my question, right? So have we looked at that option? Have we considered, and I know that that's a struggle in terms of how this process sort of has to go forward, right? There's the option to buy now and then figure out what we want to do with the space. But it sort of puts us in a tough place long-term.
Sure.
Where now we have those bond restrictions.
Sure.
For the life of the debt. My other question was sort of related, but the Harvey building. So it's my understanding we have a building that's already under or unutilized, limited use. I'm curious, so as we look at the potential to sell the senior center after, if we purchase this building, we could sell the senior center. But why haven't we sold the Harvey building, right? And I just wonder, does our process, right, do we as a town not as proactive, and are we going to end up holding the senior center the same way we have the Harvey? Or is there a reason why we still hold it? So I'm just curious really about the Harvey building because I don't really know.
Sure. So, I guess that's more of a historical issue, I guess, the fact that we have the Harvey building and sort of understanding the use of that property. We do not anticipate just holding the senior center. We anticipate selling the senior center because we don't have an identified use for that. I know that one of the questions that came to us was, why would you sell the senior center when there's need for affordable housing? We could sell the senior center to the trust. And I know that they are interested in that purchase. That's all to be worked out in the future, and it's all subject to town meeting approval. Related specifically to the Harvey building, we did do a building assessment at the same time, actually, that we did the building assessment for the golf club. We know that it needs significant work, and I think the board has an interest in going through a similar process, understanding what the community wants to do with that space.
Do you know historically what it's been used for, or?
What it's being used for now?
Well,
Yeah.
recent past, right?
Yeah, so
it's my understanding Boy Scouts meet there and we store some stuff in the basement. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's accurate. So also the community chorus, the Players Club previously as well. So we had a lease with them, a license with them where they would pay for the utilities and then they would use that space. So in terms of what the town used it for, I'm not aware of any specific town department. It was a school a long time ago.
It was originally a school, yeah. So in theory, those little bit of stuff we are utilizing, it could move to our new fancy community center, and maybe it can go with the senior center.
That's
in theory,
that's a different
right.
conversation.
And I've talked to somebody at the Boy Scouts about this very thing. And indeed, the opportunity to have multiple rooms is exactly why this presents such a great opportunity. Because what makes the Boy Scouts, unusual, something that's worth this town supporting, is that the Boy Scouts support the town, as do other organizations. So to be able to, one of those conversations about this new building in the space is how can we support some of the civic organizations that support this town? And I think this presents space to have that conversation. But it involves storage. Storage, for example, you could put on a second floor above things. But again.
He likes that stuff.
He really wants a second floor.
Okay, Josh, you have anything? Tom?
No, it's
Jean? You good?
I
Okay.
had a question and now I've forgotten it, just the storage thing. I really apologize, I'm trying to figure out where I wanted to go.
I have two more, but I
Actually,
promise-
while you're
promise to
thinking,
shut up.
I do have one question. It's not really that relevant, but
Uh-oh.
you were talking about charrette work,
Yeah.
which my context clues tell me that's design work. Is that accurate?
Well, so the charrette
Or
is.
or is that the design company that you're
No. So
referring
the,
to?
the charrette would be the community engagement process. So having,
Okay.
I guess another way to call it would be like visioning sessions is
Okay.
also a charrette. So that would be done with a third party who would take in that information and then create some opportunity or some examples for conceptual design, and then to schematic design.
Thanks. I just hadn't heard that term before.
Yeah.
So the person doing the community engagement also has ability to do design?
Yeah, so architectural firms do that community
Big involved.
engagement. It's actually similar to what the library is doing.
Do you have another question?
I just had a question in terms of subdividing the property, and could you pull up the slide where you show the property lines?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious why they were established the way they are. Some of them seem a little odd.
Sure.
For instance, on the lower line, why wouldn't we include the parking spaces and
The
go all
actually,
the way to the street?
sure. So the initial discussions were just about the building, and so this was added in. So we didn't make a specific request for parking that would be on our property because of the because we know that we'll have the reciprocal easement agreement. So making the parking available to us, all of the parking available to us, and then our parking available to others. So a lot of this has to do with this. Well, this will have to go to the planning board. So some of this has to do with frontage. Some of this has to do with, I mean, that kind of odd, like skinny piece of the parcel, I guess, at the top has to do with maintaining the open space requirement. So it just has a lot to do, excuse me, with some of the requirements of the property.
Is that something the owner came up with? This plot, or something we came up
yes.
with?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
And the second question, totally unrelated, just in terms of financing, if we're paying more than the appraised value, it's not like a house where you can't finance more than the appraised value of something. Being a municipality, we can borrow as much as we want.
Yes. Yep.
It's not the value,
It's the town, not the building.
yeah, the town's money that is probably on the line, not the, site.
So
Yes,
I
Beth?
remembered
She
my
thought of it.
question, which has to do with the old senior center, which I'm hoping becomes the old senior center. Has the police department or the fire department looked at that space as a potential substation or whatever it is that they're looking for on the other side of town?
No, that hasn't come up. I know that there are issues with the driveway, and then certainly getting out onto the street.
Yeah.
But that could be something, I guess, that they would look at. I mean, what we're saying is we have no identified use for that property. So our
Right.
expectation is that we would sell it. I don't think that would meet their needs as a substation, but worth the conversation.
Right. Because what you're seeing with this building, it's cheaper to buy something that's already up and standing than create new, depending on how much work you have to do to get it there,
Yeah.
to where you need it.
Yeah. One of the things too, though, is that like fire stations and police stations, as you all know, have very specific things that are required that we would have to add a whole garage as an example. This building, it's the shell, and then whatever we put in it is what we choose to put in it.
But what if it became the dispatch center or something like that, where it wasn't the active use, but it gave back more space?
Potentially. Yeah, potentially. I mean, we're still pursuing the Hockomock Pond property, but yeah, I mean, that I think would work better than a substation. Yeah.
So getting back to the senior thing, I think what you said something tonight that that has been much more soft pushed and everything else, and that is the expectation is that we'll sell the senior center. And I think to me that is one reason I am in favor of this, is because I do view that as redundant. Would we get the best possible price if we sold it internally? Maybe not, but I think that there's a compelling need for the affordable housing. So I think that outweighs some of those sort of best cost value options. But I'd have to say all of the verbiage everywhere that I read it is maybe if, could be, and I understand that perspective from making commitments inside the new building as we would do it. but I would be grateful if we took a more public stand for what you said, which is, we believe this should be sold, our expectation is gonna be sold, our goal is to sell it, and that revenue will come back to the town to be used as we want, including helping pay for some of this stuff, potentially. Just my own personal commitment.
Yeah.
So that's not a question, but I did have a question for library. So the fact does mention, could we use this as the library? But I think there's a window opening up for the library where we know we're gonna need to have space set aside during the build-up time. And whilst I absolutely believe there's a place in here in the new center, for a library space, I think that there's also a tremendous opportunity to save a lot of cost on being able to move the library as a temporary tenant, which I think is like a year or two, into a portion of that space for a lot of reasons, for accessibility and stuff like that. And I didn't see that addressed because I just saw it pushed off as we can't make it a library, or we shouldn't make it a library. So.
Right. So in terms of housing the library during renovation, we have talked a little bit about that. It's not, you're correct that that's not in the FAQ. A lot of that really depends on timing. You actually could say the same thing about the senior center, right? So if we were to fit up the community center and move the senior center, then you would have our old senior center available also for the library. So I definitely think that there's an opportunity there. It's just really all about timing. So that would be something that we would need to consider. Yeah.
But I don't consider that because we're selling the old senior center because that's the only way I'm in for this. So
no, but I'm saying for that period of time.
I understand.
That, but what you're saying makes sense. That if the timing worked out.
Just stop with that part. I like the part where you think I make sense.
I'm on the
In the
exact-
renovation, in the repair budget right now, there's a placeholder of like $1 million for leasing a space. So
Right.
Yeah.
if you
I'm
could
on the-
save $1 million because of your
Right.
own
I'm
space.
of the exact opposite opinion. I'd rather see the town find a good, not search for, but find a good purpose and keep our buildings and keep property, because property is one of the few things you cannot go back and get later if you want it. I mean, like, when we were looking years and years and years ago for a space to put the high school, there were only so many places available in town. And we own this building. If we take proper care of it, we might have to do some work there. I think this is a potential really good asset for the town, whether it's a second piece of the library, whether it's the dispatch station, whether it's the building that we turn into using for the Boy Scouts. There's so many potential uses of a building that's properly taken care of.
So
With the
last
town.
time we talked about this, we did talk about the fact that,
I don't
we
wanna rabbit
will.
hole too much in the senior center.
What?
Oh, no,
Make it-
I was gonna say,
let's
in
just
general,
finish
we
up
can
this
find
thread.
use for space,
Yeah.
and then suddenly we move into it. Nature abhors a vacuum. We will fill space if we're not committing to using it. And my concern is that as a
All your
town,
closets
we're
are-
just
That was
net adding
only the Harvey
60,000. Yeah, I'm feeling very much the same way about Harvey and 9 West, which is a food pantry, which, by the way, we could put a food pantry in. So I'm seeing, mind you, I'm not pushing anything at this point. My concern is senior center. We will fill it if we need to, but do we need to? And as a town, I think we're at the point where our taxes demand that we are being smarter about how we spend our money. And I'm feeling me personally, and everybody's entitled to their own thing, but I feel very strongly that we shouldn't just be accumulating space, without really good, hard and fast reasons to doing that. So.
I come from a town that sold one of its schools, and then the school population, there was a dip in population. They were sure they were never going to need it again. And then they had to go back and create space. I mean, I find that the fact that we own it is an asset, and we should use it appropriately.
So
Okay.
just so I can.
We're not really discussing.
Yeah,
that.
so
I want to
sorry.
go back. It's
The-
8:20. We're not the select board. We're not
Sorry.
sitting here till 11.
Well, I guess I would just say that the disposition of any of our property is also a town meeting vote.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
we can talk all about that when it's on the next,
that-
on a
it'll
warrant.
be a
Yeah.
great conversation to have another day. But I'd like to get on with this conversation,
Yeah.
which at this
Yeah.
point, I think, since I don't see any other questions, I would entertain a motion on it's Article 3 now, on the community center property acquisition.
Okay, McMahon, I make a motion to recommend the town vote to raise and appropriate, actually to borrow,
Yeah.
money for the For the,
8.8 million.
yep. Sorry, it's not,
Chris,
No, it's not,
Center
it's not in the
property.
It's not in
article.
here, yeah.
Sorry
I'm
about
looking for
that.
it, it's not in here.
Yeah.
To raise and borrow, $8.8 million for the purpose of purchasing the parcel of land known as 1500 Union Street.
Second,
Second?
Blumberg second, since we need it.
Okay, any further discussion?
I guess, given that there's a difference of opinion here, I'm curious to know what the town's position is on what the expectation is with that building, the senior center. So is the expectation, as you suggested, that the expectation is we would try and sell it, or is it really much more hands-off at this point, and, you don't know, we're gonna see?
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a different answer for you. There's no identified use for that building, so our expectation is that we will sell it.
Thank you.
I just have two comments. And,
Sure.
You know, I have to say, I really like the idea of this project. And if I put on my economic development hat, I'd say this is great for the development of downtown Westborough. If I put on my community development planner hat, I'd say this is great. This is the Finance Committee, and I have to say I struggle with paying 50% more than the appraised value, and kind of the take it or leave it type approach that we seem to be getting. So that's my comment.
Okay, any other
I mean,
comments?
I'll jump in as
Okay.
well. It's an exciting opportunity. I do feel like, Beth, maybe someday I'll be kicking myself for saying this, but I feel like, you know, just like there wouldn't be an identified use for the old senior center, there isn't really an identified use for this much space. None of the strategic planning has called for this much space. It's a lot of space. It's a lot more than all the strategic plans came up. I feel like we've got other priorities. It's gonna be, you know, a big effect to the taxpayer, you know, even before it's all said and done, before the fit up.
Yeah.
So that's why I have trouble supporting it at this point.
I think I'm sort of in the same boat, right? So I figure I probably have an average priced home, which means I'm looking at the $150 a year. And do I think even as and I have kids who could potentially use it, but am I gonna get $150 worth of use out of it as a year, right? And so I think that's sort of the debate we all sort of have to have. Is it worth it for me? I too love the idea, right? I love the idea of investing in a community that is focused on community and building opportunities for community engagement, for activities together, providing opportunities for our seniors, for our youth. I mean, I love the idea. I'm struggling with that we don't have anything concrete, and I understand that that's just the process and we have this opportunity. But it's very difficult to decide, is it worth $150 to me a year? Are we going to get our value? I do appreciate that we would likely sell the senior center, right? So looking here, the assessed value of the senior center is a little over $2 million. If we start looking at how we're really chipping away at that cost, does it get more tolerable, right? I mean, I get that won't actually defray our costs because we won't actually pay down the debt, but it offsets elsewhere, right? But it's really hard without really a concrete idea. I also am pretty hung up on the Harvey building and the food pantry. Like, we have these underutilized spaces.
The food pantry's not underutilized.
No.
No.
I don't
No,
mean to
if you
interrupt
tour it, you'll
but
see it's very
wouldn't
well
like that
utilized.
statement
Although I did
to
like,
be made,
I
'cause
did
that-
drive by
that's
tonight
very
after we had
accurate.
talked about it and the doors open and there were people, and so that's the
Yeah.
first time I've seen it open. But
Well, it's open Thursday nights and two
Oh.
other times. It's
All right.
not, it's not a
Yeah.
24/7.
But yeah,
Anyway,
but I mean, the Harvey building is a
digress.
great example where we have a building that's already underutilized, right? Could it have been the future senior center? Could it be the new community center? I don't have any idea. I've never been in it. It's a school building, so presumably it would have some potential meeting space, opportunities in a gymnasium. But that one for me sort of seems like a small side point, but it worries me that we're just going to continue to amass properties that are underutilized. This is a massive building that certainly will fill with something, but is it the correct priorities? So.
Anybody else? Okay, well, I come down differently on this. I mean, I've been thinking about this for 2-3 weeks now that we've been doing it, and I have settled on an in favor position. I think the importance of having a community center, to me, seems like a really good intangible, positive thing that isn't just a senior center that's located off on a side road, that is available to students, to young adults and older adults. And the opportunity to have a space where downtown with parking, with this much ability to, as we talked about earlier, having the ability to have community rooms or other activities in there, just at this price. And I know a lot of people are shocked by 8.8 million, but I've just spent 2 years on the library building committee, and I think it's amazing you can get a building of this size and condition for 8.8 million, because the repair project will be more than that, even at its probably base. So yeah, I know that's hard for us people who live in houses to think of that, but in municipal building talk, I think this is a wise investment for the town and in the best interest of the town, because I see a lot of value. I see a lot of value that could come from having this space. So I will support it. For that reason, I understand the anxiety. In fact, we really started talking about all projects kind of being really well specified and quoted and having solid quotes before we go, but this opportunity doesn't have that. If we want to go build something up in the hill at Chauncey, we can spend 3 years getting that data, but it's going to be $30 million or something more probably to do that kind of thing. So anyway, that's where I land. But I suppose we should, if people don't have other comments, we take a vote, we see where the majority is, and we probably have to potentially re-vote. And in either case, I would like to capture some of our comments. So there's nobody remote, so let's do this in person.
Wait, no one's remote?
No one's remote.
Okay.
All right. So I guess, and all in favor of the motion that's on the floor? Got 3, 4. Oh, great. We're going to talk.
Someone might abstain.
Oh, someone might abstain. Anybody opposed? All right, we have 4 in favor, 4 opposed, and nobody abstaining. So the motion doesn't carry. I don't know if it's worth our time to vote the opposite, because would anybody change their mind in the opposite direction? So basically, we don't have a finding.
We have pros and cons.
Yeah.
I think that's valuable in itself.
So I would like to collect some pros
Walt?
and cons.
Can you get,
Yes, Chris.
I didn't want to jump in your deliberation, but I
Sure.
just want to clarify something that was said about the Harvey building. So it does not have a gym in it.
No.
And it's also, I think, more importantly, in terms of accumulating all these properties, it is in a location, it's a prime location in the downtown. So trying to be thoughtful about what to do with that building is completely different than the discussion about what to do with the senior center, which is not that space. So I'm not trying to change your vote, I just think that should be clarified.
It's right in the middle of the neighborhood, right? The Harvey building?
In the downtown.
Yeah, it's behind like the Y or something back there.
Yeah.
Okay. So also, there may therefore be no point in voting Article 4 other than to say we voted at town meeting, right? Or
Well, I would vote in favor of Article 4.
Yeah.
I would too.
As would
Yeah.
I.
okay, well then we could do that.
'Cause-
This is normally what
If
we
Article
might do
3
is
passes, I obviously think that
Article 4. makes
Article
sense.
4 should pass, so. And if it doesn't, it's gonna be moot.
Is it worth also considering we might want to revote this when Melanie's here and we have 9 folks?
I can't, well, we won't have another meeting with 9 votes unless all 9 people or 7 people come to town. I don't know how many people are coming to town meeting.
Oh, so I guess the next time we're meeting is at the town meeting. Oh, okay. I
Well,
take
right
that
now,
back.
that's the plan. We could meet again, but,
Okay, no, no.
in that
that-
case, we
Melanie,
would.
I appreciate
Melanie
that.
as the tiebreaker could have a significant impact.
Yeah, I
I'm
know
not-
she's
it could be-
traveling. I
it
don't
could be
know
a
her
quick
schedule.
meeting.
I don't
Could
know
be
her
a very
availability.
quick meeting.
We are not meeting next Thursday?
Well, I'd rather just vote at town meeting than creating another meet. It won't be in the R and
Yeah, it
R
won't be in the
anyway, so
R&R.
it's
Okay,
somewhat
go then.
irrelevant
Yeah.
at that
Yeah.
point.
the lot's been cast. That's good.
I mean, we can put the split vote in the R and R.
Right, well, I can just
With an-
describe it. It's not an
With
approved
the,
motion.
yeah, right,
The AFC split 4 votes in 4
right.
and has no recommendation, I guess you could say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Good night.
So,
And we,
I mean, we can't change the motion. I would
well, we
say,
can have another motion.
I would say if, and I mean, I don't think this can be done, but if the purchase price was the appraised value, then I would vote in favor.
That's the
Yeah,
same as
but-
voting against.
Right,
We
right.
Yeah.
can't do
right.
that. We can't change the purchase
Yeah,
price.
yeah.
It's not up to us. That's outside our purview. Yeah, I know. Okay, so do you think there's value in voting Article 4, or do you just want to say we'll report our vote at town meeting? Because if it doesn't,
I don't have any problem
If the-
voting Article 4. I mean, it sounds like Article
then-
4 will pass. But
okay, with a straw poll, but make a motion then. Do you,
there's one problem though. I don't know what
You don't have the
the sum
numbers.
of money is.
oh, you should just
Uh-oh.
let
Do you
me
know what the sum
believe
of money
it was
is?
Well, I think it might be in the FAQ.
195? It is 160 plus, it's something like 195,350.
Should we move something like?
Yeah.
Chris, you left too
What's
soon.
the downside in voting on town floor, on the floor?
It's just not in the
Not
booklet, but I don't know if this
Yeah.
one matters if it's in the booklet.
Probably not, yeah.
Because,
I guess
we can-
since
we
we don't
can
know what
report
the
our
dollar
vote.
amount's gonna be.
well, we can find it. It's just a question of, yeah, I mean, that's not hard to find.
It's not our.
195,350.
It's in the presentation that we just saw.
All right, so the motion would be 195,350. Yeah, that was in the pro,
And it's from free cash.
yeah.
So, thank you. McMahon, vote to recommend the town vote to transfer from free cash sum of $195,000, $350,000 for the purpose of completing due diligence, community engagement, design and operating costs related to the acquisition of the property located at 12 Union Street.
Bradley, second?
12 Union Street or
1500.
1500
Union Street.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
And it is 195.
It's a typo. It says 12 in the, yeah.
That is funny. It says, how many times have we all looked at this?
Looked at what?
That it says 12 Union Street in
I saw it once and I
in
glossed
Article
over
4.
it. Yeah.
I didn't catch it.
Oh, well, I think that's the overall property address, so that might be a legal description, but it says it's known as
Oh.
this part. So we're
Okay.
buying a
Okay.
portion of that
Are we about to
property, so
buy a totally different
that
building?
might be where it comes from. I don't think it came from a vacuum. I think,
So in other words, we're buying the
Better call
whole
Saul.
thing, not just.
Well, we're at it. Can we buy Napa?
You know what? If we can get the whole thing for 8.8, I'll vote yes.
And then flip it.
okay,
Flip
come on,
it for 11.
we gotta keep going. There's a motion, McMahon, on that. Is there a second?
Second. Clap second.
Dennis Clapp, second. Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, I want to just make sure I got the right people. I didn't write down the votes as they're going. But on the 4 that were in favor again are Blumberg, Leslie, Dolan, and somebody else. Who's the
Bradley.
fourth?
Really?
Bradley, okay. So the others
Yes.
are no, except for Board, who's not here. Okay, thank you.
Melanie would be against it.
All right, so now let's vote, all in favor of Article 4, since I don't hear any comments. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, this is unanimous. All right.
Well, I mean, if we're buying the
If you're
building, we
buying it,
all
yeah.
want to do due diligence
You do it,
and
you
keep
gotta
the
do it
power on.
Okay. So, all right, so now I wanted to just return quickly to the community center acquisition comments. For this article, the committee comment is if the town votes in favor of Article 3, Article 4 makes perfect sense, or something like that.
There is a need to do
Yeah.
due diligence if we are going to go forward.
Okay?
And community engagement.
Yeah,
Okay.
You know,
Right.
community engagement, I think, is,
Paramount.
okay. What would people like me to put in for our comment on the other article? Because probably
Our
that'll
whole
be what
comment
people-
structure gets a lot more complicated when it's
Well, there's no.
This
there's
is
no
a pretty-
minority,
There's just a
right? Like it's
community
a split.
comment and there is no
Probably
majority
the
or
biggest
minority,
one
so
that
it's
the board
just,
has been split
Pretty
on
common.
in the 7 years I've been on the board.
we did that before on one of them, but then someone else came or we voted again another night
Yeah,
and there was another one.
but only it was 8.8
I think I've
million
captured
worth.
some of them. I think there was a concern, on buying it above the appraisal value. I think there was a concern, about the, amount of space and whether that much space is needed.
But that's also a pro.
well, not to those of us who
Well,
think it's a,
Yeah, so
Right, con.
flip that around, there is, it can be a separate thing. I mean, you can also
Right.
say, there's a lot of space inside for being
Right,
able
that's
to
what
do
I'm
a lot of things. Rod mentioned it's good for economic development, investing in the community.
Great for teaching all of our kids in town to swim.
so I
think we
think the
keep the
other
pool.
part of the,
And you can afford to pay
of the not being in support
Yeah,
was, you know, the priority relative to other opportunities,
like the golf course or
opportunity
something.
cost.
like the library and the golf course.
Well, and I think along those same lines, I think it's a lot of big projects
Schools.
all at once. I think we're relatively spread thin in terms of big projects. How do you coordinate the library space and the community center space and the golf course all at the same time? Or are we just gonna put meeting rooms in all of them? Right, there was a reference to a computer lab at the community center, but in my experience, that belongs in a library. Do we need two? And I just think it's a
Well,
lot
we
to
won't.
coordinate.
We're no longer expanding the library, so
Yeah,
it's
there won't
not,
be room.
it's a different,
Right.
I mean, it's a
But I just think
different
it's a
one,
lot of
yeah.
projects to
Yeah.
manage in tandem.
Yep,
I'm not sure if it's worth reiterating the fact that, like Rod said, if you're not wearing the finance hat, but the strategic master plan, economic development, it checks off all those boxes, senior needs survey,
Yeah.
unique location. The other,
Convenient to the schools, like they
yeah,
can all
downtown,
walk.
it's walkable. The other concept is if it, hypothetically, if we were to say a couple years from now, okay, we are interested in purchasing this after having further conversation and doing more due diligence, I wonder if the price would be higher. So the trends in
Or not
real estate,
available.
or not available, or maybe lower, who the heck knows, but.
Or we put together a lease option compared to somebody else that's leasing the space,
Yep.
Yeah.
and maybe take 2/3 of the building.
That could be a
Yeah,
creative.
I think that's a little harder, because if you sell the senior center and you're then committed to leasing this building.
And who
pays for
the
the
lease
build-out?
goes away.
You're on that
and-
point.
Yeah.
They do.
The
It costs
fit-
less.
You think, yeah, the landlord would, yeah.
Without
But
the state
but
purchasing
leases aren't very
Yeah,
requirement.
pipe
long-term either, usually.
Sometimes
Yeah.
those happen.
Talking about 5 years or
Oh,
something.
I bet they take a 20-year lease.
Yeah, I mean, if you did
think
even a
they would.
10-year, right, a 10-year and have them do the build-out?
But then it's at a fixed price, right?
And then in 10,
We're going
11
pretty far
years,
down
what
the
do you
rabbit
do?
hole.
I know, yeah, keep
Yeah.
We
going.
just need a sentence
Anyway.
or two to put in
Either
the
way,
R&R.
so as
That
far
has nothing to
as
do
far
with
as,
the R&R.
as far as the reiterating a lot of the positive points, I mean, those are gonna be in the presentations folks are gonna see, so I don't know if that's redundant. We
Yeah.
need to get that in the R&R.
I
I
think
guess that's kind of a question.
So I do really like though Tom's perspective and also Rod's, and I think maybe our answer is some combination there, where I say it checks a lot of the boxes in terms of strategic plans and all of these different assessments.
Every one
But
of them.
our role and what we are tasked with is evaluating the financial impact on the advisory finance committee. And from that perspective,
Sorry, I'll let you go.
right, I mean, yes, it checks all these boxes, but is it more than we need at a higher cost than we want to pay?
I
So
think
sorry.
I
go
just
ahead.
want to state that the advisory finance committee is, the first word is advice and advisory, and we do zoning articles, we do all articles. And it isn't all just a financial perspective, we're supposed to figure out what we think is in the best interest of the town. And maybe people who have finance backgrounds or something but at least half of us don't, maybe more, are attracted to that committee. Our focus is not purely financial.
But the finances do have a significant impact.
Right. Well, obviously, I think everybody goes to town meeting.
Show me the money, yeah.
Yeah, the money articles always are more
Yeah.
personal,
Contentious.
right?
But I think we also have the best perspective in terms of the overall finances of the town and how a specific project relates
Yeah.
to that. So, I think it is more finance-based than other committees.
I just wanted to.
Well, yes, for instance, sorry, but the planning board their mission in life is to make the town, be well-planned or whatever, laid out. They aren't, how the money comes or where it comes from is their a second tier thing. So maybe this is our first tier.
Yeah,
when we
right.
Look at it
Yeah,
the other way.
I
And
agree.
I think that would be a fair statement. Okay, sorry, Tim.
That's okay. I just wanted to, when Jane was commenting, and I guess Tom, about how it clicked all the boxes in the strategic plans, the strategic plans didn't call for 63,000 square feet. I mean, even when it was pie in the sky, the community center building was, 26,000 square feet. When it was just conceptual, the senior center is under 9 now. It's too small, but even if you double that, we're still not close to the size. So it's not, I don't think it's really accurate to say it clicks all the boxes strategic plan.
Which is why I said it,
No, I understand.
except
I
for
just
its
wanted to.
overkill.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was
I
my.
had verbalized it. Thank you for pointing that out.
Okay, I may have trouble, end up figuring out what to do.
Yeah.
But in the end, I think, it's probably fair to say that we had a split vote and then people felt positive and negative things. I can do my best to try and glean some of these, but given.
We trust you.
Okay, I'll try it. And I probably have, while I will send it in tomorrow, I can still edit it probably on Tuesday, so I will send it
More
out to the
editing?
group. Yeah, not on this hour, it's fine. Okay, so, very good. Two other articles to vote on, or decide if we want to vote on, are the zoning. I'm very thankful that both Rod and John brought up the small setbacks on the property and a concern about that, just generally the carte blanche use of the land. At the planning board meeting on Tuesday night, they did establish setbacks. So there's two ways to do this. The motion will be changing from what's in the warrant, and I don't have the exact wording. I'm okay with voting on a motion that we support the article as amended at the planning board meeting of October 3rd, because that would set, that will be, in theory, what the motion is. Or we can just wait and hear the motion, or see the motion. I don't know. We probably get the motions ahead of time, and vote at, on town meeting floor. I mean, I don't think it's It's not a huge issue to me, but there might be preferences by people one way or the other. I took some notes, but honestly, they kept going back and forth on the setback, so I can't claim that I have the,
Rod, did you
Final
attend the
numbers.
meeting?
You know, I have to say I failed my appointment. I thought it was Wednesday, but I did watch it in retrospect and,
So can you explain it? Because I don't
Okay,
actually
so,
understand.
yes.
Is really what I was getting to.
Okay.
Can you dumb it down for me?
I think Walter kind of explained. So the initial thing was 0 setbacks and using the height requirements of whatever zone it was adjacent to.
But does 0 setbacks mean that they could build all the way to the
So-
street? Is
Yes.
that,
So, and
that's
the,
what I need, the real dummy
right,
version.
so the way it was worded and the reason for the 0 setbacks theoretically was they worded it so that it talked about construction limits as opposed to the building location and its limits.
Okay.
So on the advice of town council, they've now changed it, which I believe goes to what it was originally intended to be a setback to the building, not the setback to any construction that happens on site. So I was,
because if it's the construction limit, you kind of have to almost go to
To the edge of the
to
property.
get your front end
Trucks and-
loader in, you know, next to the
Okay.
building. I mean, Rod ran into that problem at the
yeah,
library.
yeah.
But, you know, anyway, the
So,
planning board was kind of all over that and wanted to basically, I think, go sort of to the setbacks that exist in that.
right, so on Oak Street, they went to the setbacks that are in that area, which is 25 feet all the way around and a 60-foot height. On the Morse Street, Hopkinton, there was a lot of concern by the owners about putting a large chemical storage building in the residential area adjacent to wetlands. So they proposed 50 feet adjacent to the residential side, 15 feet all the way around, and instead they had requested 35 feet, even though the building's only 17 feet high. In order to go in some leeway, they suggested 25 feet. So I believe those are the dimensions.
They're
They need,
roughly-
they should be fact-checked.
Right.
I'll-
That's why I was willing to say as they voted, because I think your numbers sound correct.
And I have to say, you know, there's a difference in, you know, I think the planning board stated this in terms of what's happening on Oak Street, which is more of an industrial area, versus what's happening at the corner of Morris and Hopkinton, which is a residential neighborhood. I personally feel, even though they voted for it, that the second one relative to the chemical storage tank they should wait till they have a defined site plan. It's very preliminary at this point. They don't have a location for the building. I don't see the urgency of passing it right now, and I agree with the neighbors in terms of their concern about having a large chemical storage facility in their neighborhood when there may be options to make it smaller. I think it has to do with how many deliveries of a tanker truck you have to deliver the chemicals. But I don't understand the DEP requirements either, so, but this is evidently something that's in preliminary design for the DPW, but I think we're a ways away from that actually coming to us as a vote for the financing. So I would vote to defer on that one.
And the other aspect of that, though, I think in fairness, is that we are already storing chemicals in a worse way
Right.
in an adjacent property in a more of a wetland than where this is, so.
But they're also much smaller containers, so if
Yeah.
something happens.
I'm sure that can be designed, but the fact that the DEP are the ones that are pushing this to change and do it, I'm going to assume that the design is gonna have to be somewhat bulletproof, but.
Rigorous.
Okay, so that all comes down to, do we wanna vote now on this and, or are people not comfortable?
Take it on the floor. I'll vote now, whatever.
Vote at town meeting, okay? So try to find the motion ahead of time so you can at least know it, and we can do that. So we will report our vote on Articles 11 and 12 at town meeting. Okay, that's good. All right, next up is the R and R. The guys that came in later, if you want a printed copy. Andrew, do you have it in front of you, or do you need?
Oh, no, that's right. I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay.
Josh, do you want a hard copy?
No, he's got a computer. That's, I think I asked him already. Okay, so, let me see, find my copy, which I threw away. Yes, here it is, because it's only one-sided. Received some great comments from a lot of people, and they're all incorporated in there already. Are there other comments that people want to make? And at this point, I'm probably not taking any more grammatical corrections.
That's all I asked.
No, this was far more than that.
Okay, it's a content, yeah. Don't
No,
sound
it
so
was far
strong.
more than that. It was actually clarified it, but I'll give you a minute to.
You know, they moved away from the 2 spaces after periods in the 1950s is.
Yeah,
Just
well,
an
I was born
observation.
in the 50s, it turns out.
I still do it.
Yeah, I told, Andrew wanted me to get
If
rid
you want
of
your
the double
paper to
spaces,
look
and I told him I
longer.
refused because
Double
the
space.
problem for me would be, I could go through and do it now, but if I edit any sentences, that would have double spaces. So it's, as long as I'm the one typing it, they're gonna have double spaces, because it's just
And
too
if,
hard
and
for
if
me
you
to
were
do it the other
typing
way.
it, we'd be fine with double spaces.
I need 2 spaces, no Oxford commas.
Oh, I'm all about the
my God.
Oxford.
Oh,
No
yeah.
Oxford commas. It's
Okay,
superfluous.
all right,
There's
I
no
have
reason.
confidence that you stopped hitting return at the end of every line too, but you know.
I think we need a
learn.
motion.
Motion to,
Is there?
Well, do
Bring
we
it
need,
back to
are we
order.
ready for a motion?
second.
Yes, because there's a very specific motion to be made, which Gene has a
But
copy of.
are there
which reference
more
it.
comments?
Well, you can make the motion, and we can
Yeah,
still
that's true.
comment it afterwards, because it says as edited tonight.
All right. McMahon moves to approve the Advisory Finance Committee booklet as amended and edited at tonight's meeting with the provision that typographic and formatting changes, including verifying the consistent and correct use of amounts which do not impact the substance, can be made by the chairman, the vice chair, and his designee.
Second. Dolan.
Okay, any further discussion now? If not, then I will assume there are no further changes that I will make other than putting in the date that it's approved. But we'll take a vote, all in favor. Anybody opposed? Are you in favor?
Oh, I'm in favor. I'm sorry. I was
Okay.
just,
So that
double
was
reading it.
approved 800, thank you.
Well done,
Um,
Walter.
Yeah. Oh, well done, I thought you said hold on.
No, I
I'm
said
like,
well
no.
done.
I thought
Hold on,
so
hold on,
too.
hold on, hold on, very well done.
Hold your horses.
Okay, one thing I would like to suggest to everybody, since we aren't voting on those things, I think it's well worth everybody's, it takes an hour, but you can do it less if you do it at 1.5 speed. But the planning board meeting is available on Westborough TV. I think I sent the link. It's how the meeting starts. You don't have to look for it at all. It's just right there. And it's good background. It's better background than you'll get, and
Yeah.
better background than we got about it before. And I think that will help formulate your vote, hopefully, because you have to pick it sooner or later.
Is that the only thing we haven't voted?
Those
Well,
two
there's two,
articles, we
but
didn't
yeah.
vote Article 1, which I've left as we
Right.
will report our vote, because I'm expecting the motion to be pass over, so we could take
oh
a
no,
vote
prior
to
year's
pass
bills.
over it, but then if it
Right.
isn't, then it's a mess, so I think yeah, so 3 out of 15 we didn't
Number
vote
1
yet,
hardly
which
counts.
isn't bad, and
so- Yeah.
technically we have no motion on the other one, because we didn't pass yet, but that's okay, we have a reported vote. All right, so I have my little list here. We approved the R&R message, we voted on 500 books, we voted on the community center, and we talked about the votes on the other. Okay, so the plan now is we will meet at 6:30. Please arrive so that you can be at our meeting at 6:30, because you gotta check in or whatever. We will have minutes to approve, which I'd like to get done at town meeting, because we'll have 3 sets of our minutes, and it's good to get them
Cleaned, passed.
done and passed, and we don't wanna have another meeting for a little while after this.
I'm just gonna ask a question. I know I
Yeah.
missed the vote on the IRNR, but is the community center gonna be contentious, and will more than 500 people show up because of it?
Well, first
Maybe.
of all, my point of view is everybody doesn't need a book. If you're coming in as a couple, one book is plenty. So that, to me,
If you're
that's,
coming in for the
it's
one
practically like
books, you've got a
1,000
little
people
more.
could be there, which is an exceptionally rare number at our town meetings. I mean,
Okay.
I'm very comfortable with the 500. I
Okay.
probably would have been comfortable with 4,
Okay,
and we'll see, but 500, I think, certainly covers a lot of people. And I don't think, I mean,
and
I'm
it's gonna
hoping
be-
it's one night, because that's the other thing that affects the number of booklets. When you go
take
multi-days,
Yeah.
different people come the next time, et cetera. So, but,
Right,
I didn't think, like, until I watched the planning board meeting, that there was any contention at all on these two articles, for instance. So there's
thought it
the
was very
surprise
clear.
one that could go on for a while, although we gotta remember, we're not voting on that project, we're just voting on a space they could
Setbacks.
put a building, because they have to come back for money at some point. And even if they wanted to do it with ARPA funds, we would get a shot at reviewing the ARPA funds. So, it has to be, stay focused on just the zoning, which is what it is, but.
We can get more building.
well, the other question is, can we make sure that the final version of the R&R is available online so that people
will be.
can follow along with their electronic copy?
Yes, it is, it will be.
And
The
John
timing
said
and-
he would put
Yeah.
a link to the, or he would put the address
Yeah.
Right,
up on
So
the big
the
screen.
timing goes like, tomorrow morning, well, the town closes at noon tomorrow, right, Friday? So Celia will have gotten pretty far onto the new stuff I hopefully have given to her before then. They have Monday off, it's a holiday. Tuesday morning is my last chance to, I'm hoping she'll send me everything to give it a review. Tuesday morning is the latest we can send it to the vendor, Curry Printing, for printing. And probably a couple days later, we'll get approved. And once we have approved, then we can, in theory, as long as that's okay, then that can be, the PDF
Move
can
it
go
to
on the
Skype.
webpage.
Yeah.
And so it will probably, before, maybe Wednesday, Thursday of next week, it would be available on the
Okay.
webpage. And I don't even remember all the things that go in this, but we only write a few of the things, so that's good. Like Leah writes the numbers, and John has a section too, things like that. Okay, I think we can adjourn, if somebody makes that motion.
Shafford, motion to adjourn?
Did you want to
Nope.
ask about liaison reports?
Oh, I could, but.
I don't know
we
that
have-
there are any, but it's on the agenda.
Okay. Hearing no liaison reports. I just do a real quick one. We did have our library building committee meeting, and
Open can of worms there.
and the ballparky kind of quote numbers are starting to come in, and what they include and all that. And unfortunately, they didn't send that before the meeting, and I haven't had a chance to digest them. But in a couple of more weeks, that should all become. After we're done with this meeting, we should be starting getting a lot more information, and they will be making a 5-minute presentation at town meeting too, as an update. Okay.
What's the status with the golf club building?
The golf club building there, Shelby would be the expert probably, but my understanding is the next step is to form a building committee for the golf club. The golf club, what's the story with it?
So the next step would be to form a building committee to evaluate the recommendation.
Which was to knock the building down?
Yes. To fully renovate and knock it.
To start over.
Yes, to start over is the better way to say it, yep.
Okay.
Okay. All right, did we get a second on the adjournment?
No, you didn't give us a chance. Clap second.
Thank you, sorry. I keep interrupting people. You gotta learn not to interrupt. That kind of thing. All in favor? We don't have to do roll call. We are dismissed. Thank you, Westborough TV. It's only 902, that's
That was pretty good.
That's not horrendous for what